What if love isn't what we think it is? Not a fairy tale, not a sacred bond, not even a mutual understanding between two souls, but instead, what if love is a kind of theater, a carefully staged performance, a psychological sleight of hand, a dance of illusions and shadows, where what we call attraction is often just a projection of unmet needs and unconscious power games? Nietzsche once said, "There is always some madness in love, but there is also always some reason in madness." That tension between chaos and calculation might be the key to understanding not only love, but why it often hurts, why it fades, why it transforms us, for better or worse. So let's explore love through the eyes of Nietzsche, peel back the curtain of romance, and examine the roles we play in the drama of desire. Because love, as we'll see, isn't just about connection, it's about control, it's about power, and above all, it's about illusion. We grow up with a very specific story about love, that it's supposed to complete us, save us, that somewhere out there a person exists who will finally understand us so deeply, so perfectly, that our loneliness will vanish forever. This is what Nietzsche would call a metaphysical illusion, a belief in something perfect and eternal in a world that is anything but. He would challenge the entire foundation of this myth. To him, romantic love isn't sacred. It's suspicious, not because it's meaningless, but because it disguises deeper, darker motives. In his view, we don't fall in love with people. We fall in love with the idea of them, with the way they reflect what we lack, with how they temporarily numb the ache of existence, and in doing so, we turn them into gods. We sanctify the beloved. We blind ourselves to their flaws, not out of kindness, but out of need. Because to see them clearly would destroy the fantasy, and without the fantasy, the love collapses. But Nietzsche doesn't stop at illusion. He goes further. Underneath every romantic relationship, he suggests, lies something more primal, a struggle not just for connection, but for dominance. Enter the will to power, Nietzsche's famous concept, the driving force behind all human behavior. It's not survival we're after, he says, it's expansion, influence, the ability to shape the world and others according to our will, and love is no exception. When we love someone, do we really want them to be free, or do we want them to be ours? Do we want to empower them, or do we secretly want them to need us, depend on us, reflect us? This isn't just about men or women, it's about human nature. Love in this light becomes a battleground of disguised desires, of roles assigned, power exchanged, masks worn. Nietzsche would ask, who is seducing whom, and why? Nowhere are these power games more subtle and more explosive than in the realm of gender. Traditionally, society has assigned roles in love, men as pursuers, women as the pursued, men as providers, women as nurturers. But Nietzsche might argue that these roles are not natural, they're negotiated, shaped by culture, cemented by repetition, and often weaponized to gain psychological leverage. A man may love a woman not for who she is, but for how she makes him feel, respected, needed, powerful. A woman may love a man not for his character, but for what he provides, security, status, validation. These aren't universal truths, but they are tendencies, and when love becomes tied to identity, the stakes become dangerously high. Nietzsche warns us whenever power is disguised as affection, manipulation follows. We think we're being loved, when in fact we're being used, or worse, we're using others without realizing it. In this dynamic, attraction isn't pure, it's strategic. Gender roles become performance art, and love becomes a silent negotiation, where the one who loves less often holds the most power. But perhaps the cruelest illusion in love is idealization. Nietzsche believed that when we love, we often don't see the person, we see a mirror of our deepest longings. We project virtue onto the beloved, we make them into symbols. We romanticize their flaws, mistake our need for connection as evidence of destiny. And when they inevitably fail to live up to the fantasy, because no human can we feel betrayed. But were they the problem? Or were our expectations the real villain? This idealization sets the stage for disappointment, because it's not love if it only exists in perfection. Real love, Nietzsche might say, requires a confrontation with reality, with flaws, with change, with truth. And most of us are not in love with the truth, we're in love with the dream. So, if love is illusion, power, projection, what hope is there? Strangely, Nietzsche doesn't say we should abandon love. He never denies its importance. What he proposes instead is a more honest love. A love not rooted in fantasy, but in shared growth. A love that doesn't idealize but accepts. A love that acknowledges the power dynamics and chooses to transcend them through awareness. This requires brutal self-honesty. It means asking not who loves me, but why do I need to be loved in this way? Not why did they hurt me, but what illusion was I clinging to? Nietzsche's version of love is closer to friendship. Two strong individuals who don't complete each other, but challenge each other, who don't fuse into one but walk side by side, aware of their differences. It's rare, it's hard, and it's not very marketable, but it's real. Love isn't what we've been sold. It's not always soft, it's not always safe, and it certainly isn't always fair. But when we strip away the illusions, when we see the power games, the roles, the projections, we're left with something raw, something uncertain, and maybe something worth building. Nietzsche didn't want us to give up on love. He wanted us to grow up in love, to stop pretending, to stop performing, to stop projecting. Because only then, only when the masks fall, can we finally see each other, not as gods, not as saviors, but as fellow wanderers. There's a reason we cling to illusions in love, because to love without illusion, to love truthfully, requires us to be seen, fully. And for most people, that's terrifying. To be seen means exposing our wounds, our insecurities, our contradictions. It means no longer performing. No longer pretending we're more confident, more composed, more perfect than we are. Nietzsche understood that most of us fear this level of intimacy, not because we don't crave it, but because we don't trust that we'll still be loved when the performance ends. So we hide, we curate, we offer the best version of ourselves, and secretly hope they never look behind the curtain. But here's the paradox: we want to be loved for who we are, yet we keep showing people who we're not. We end up stuck in a cycle, performing to be loved, but feeling unloved because we're not truly known. Nietzsche would likely call this a kind of self-betrayal. We offer the illusion of ourselves to maintain the illusion of their love, and when the illusion breaks, we feel abandoned, when in truth, it was never real. So how do we escape this cycle? Nietzsche believed in the idea of self-overcoming, the act of constantly transcending your own limitations, becoming, rather than being. Applied to love, this means that true connection isn't static. It's not about finding the right person and settling down into comfort. It's about growing with someone and allowing them to grow, even if it means outgrowing your illusions. It's the opposite of possession. It's liberation. But liberation is difficult, because it means letting go of the fantasy, letting your partner change, letting yourself change, and resisting the urge to control the other when their transformation threatens your comfort. Nietzsche might ask, can you love someone without needing them to remain who they were when you first met? Can you allow them to evolve into something you didn't anticipate? Most people can't, because we confuse stability with love. But in Nietzsche's view, love isn't about stillness, it's about becoming, side by side. He would argue the most profound relationships are not the ones that offer security, they are the ones that demand courage. Nietzsche also believed that solitude was essential for any deep experience of life, including love, not isolation, not loneliness, but solitude as a form of self-intimacy, the ability to stand alone, to think independently, to not need another to complete you. And here's the twist: only those who are capable of solitude, Nietzsche suggests, are truly capable of love, because they are not seeking a savior. They're not trying to fill a void. They don't fall in love because they're empty. They fall in love because they're full and want to share.
This connects closely with Carl Jung's idea of individuation, the process of becoming your whole self, integrating your shadow, embracing your contradictions, owning your desires and fears without projecting them onto others. In a way, love between two individuated people is not a merging, but a meeting. It's not two halves becoming whole, it's two wholes choosing to dance. No illusions, no masks, just presence. And this kind of love, it's rare, because most people are still trying to use love, rather than offer it. So what happens when we give up the fairy tale? When we stop believing that love should be perfect, that it should be easy, that it should always feel good, something deeper emerges, a love that includes pain, that expects difficulty, that honors the seasons of change. It's not the love that says you complete me, it's the love that says, I see you and I stay, not because I need you, not because I own you, but because I respect your becoming, even as I protect my own. This love doesn't require agreement, it requires presence. It doesn't demand perfection, it welcomes honesty, and it doesn't fear endings, because it knows that endings are not failures, they are transformations. Nietzsche would call this a tragic love, not because it ends in sorrow, but because it accepts sorrow as part of its truth. The fairy tale ends with happily ever after, but real love doesn't end, it changes form. It teaches, it breaks us open, and in that breaking, we grow. So what do we do with all this? We stop pretending love is simple. We stop blaming others for the collapse of our illusions. We stop seeking salvation in romance, and instead seek truth. Love is not a cure for loneliness. It is an invitation to evolve. Nietzsche didn't want us to reject love. He wanted us to become worthy of it. And that starts with seeing clearly, without illusion, without idealization, without the performance, because only then can we love another, not as an escape from ourselves, but as a companion on the wild, painful, beautiful journey of becoming. We live in an age of curation. Our identities are stitched together from highlight reels, crafted bios, filtered photos, carefully worded texts. Even our declarations of love are performances for an audience. Nietzsche, if he were alive today, would likely recoil at how commodified our affections have become. We market ourselves to potential lovers, like products. Our value determined by metrics, likes, attention, desirability. This is the marketplace of modern romance, and in the marketplace, everything becomes a transaction. We swipe left, swipe right, discarding complexity in favor of efficiency. We want compatibility, not mystery, convenience, not challenge. We mistake availability for affection, and stimulation for connection. But Nietzsche would ask, what are we sacrificing for this ease? The answer, depth, struggle, discovery, the danger of real love. Love has always involved risk, but in our culture, risk is something to be optimized out. We want guarantees, assurances, exit strategies, prenuptial agreements and backup plans. But what if love, in its purest form, requires us to not know? What if the beauty of love lies precisely in its unpredictability, in its refusal to be contained? To enter love without illusion, then, is to step willingly into the unknown. Here's the truth. No one likes to admit, love doesn't always make us better. Sometimes it exposes our worst. It brings up jealousy, insecurity, control, our buried childhood wounds, our unconscious expectations, the stories we inherited about what we deserve or don't. Nietzsche would say that love often reveals who we are when we are most afraid, and that's where the opportunity lies, not in suppressing these shadows, but in meeting them. When we find ourselves becoming possessive, do we pause and ask, what am I really afraid of losing? When we feel invisible, do we ask, am I offering myself honestly, or hiding behind performance, expecting them to guess who I am? Love is a mirror. It doesn't fix us, it reflects us, and most of us don't like what we see. But Nietzsche would argue good, because only when we see clearly without illusion, can we begin to transform. This is the painful grace of love. It strips away the ego, it humbles us, it demands growth, or it dies. Love in its truest form is not a feeling, it's a choice. And in a world obsessed with feelings, feelings that come and go like waves, This is a radical idea, to choose someone again and again, not because they meet your needs, not because they fulfill a fantasy, but because you see them and choose them anyway. This choice becomes sacred. Nietzsche didn't speak of love as divine, but he did believe in the sacredness of values we create ourselves. When we choose love consciously, with full awareness of its challenges and limits, we give it meaning, we create its value. In this way, love becomes a form of art, not something we fall into, something we craft, with patience, with courage, with presence, and like all art, it requires sacrifice, discipline, attention. It's not always beautiful, but it's always real. Perhaps the final question Nietzsche would have us ask is this: can you love someone and still let them go? Not as punishment, not out of pride, but because their path and yours diverge, and you love them enough not to clip their wings. This is the highest form of love, not possession, not obsession, but liberation. To say, I love you, not for what you give me, but for who you are when you're free. This kind of love is not for the faint of heart. It requires the death of ego, the death of control, the death of the illusion that we can hold on to anything forever. But in its place, something beautiful arises: respect, reverence, gratitude, the understanding that love is not about owning someone's future. It's about honoring their becoming, even when that becoming takes them somewhere you cannot follow. This love doesn't end when the relationship ends. It leaves an imprint on the soul. It shapes us, it breaks us open, and it reminds us, love was never supposed to make us comfortable. It was meant to make us conscious. So what would Nietzsche say about love? He would strip away the illusion, burn the fairy tale, confront us with the unbearable truth that love is not a sanctuary, but a crucible. It will test you, it will undo you, it will demand things from you that no self-help book or rom-com could prepare you for. But if you are willing, truly willing to love without illusion, to face the discomfort, to abandon control, to choose truth over fantasy, then love, real love, becomes a fire, one that doesn't consume but transforms. Because in the end, love is not about finding the right person, it's about becoming the kind of person who can love without illusion. And that is the most difficult, most dangerous, and most sacred journey of all. Most people don't lie to their partners, they lie to themselves. They say, I just want someone to accept me for who I am. But who are you? Do you even know? Nietzsche believed most of us are strangers to ourselves. We hide behind identities we didn't choose, cultural roles, inherited beliefs, romantic ideals. In love, these masks grow thicker. We perform who we think we need to be to earn affection. We mirror desires we don't understand. We mistake chemistry for truth. This is self-deception, and it runs deep. When we tell ourselves, this is love, we rarely stop to ask, according to whom? Is this my vision of love, or something I've absorbed from movies, parents' trauma? Nietzsche's call is radical. If you want to love someone truly, you must first destroy the version of yourself built to be loved by others. That's the terrifying part. To be loved as you are, you must first know who that is, and strip away everything that isn't. Most people aren't ready for that, so they stay in the illusion, comfortable, numb, repeating the same patterns, calling it fate. What if love isn't about finding the right person, but about becoming the person who no longer needs to be found? Nietzsche believed in the Übermensch, not as a superior being, but as someone who creates their own values, someone who transcends the herd, someone who becomes. In that spirit, love can be seen not as a reward, but as a mirror and a challenge. It's not your partner's job to complete you. It's their presence, sometimes tender, sometimes painful, that reveals your incompletion. Love is the friction that calls your inner contradictions into the light. The way you need to control, the way you fear abandonment, the way you confuse love with validation. All of it comes up, and it's not a failure when it does. It's an invitation. Love, at its highest, does not keep you where you are. It pulls you forward. It drags you, kicking and screaming if it must, into becoming more than what you were. Not for them, for you. Because when you truly become yourself, love is no longer a transaction, it becomes an offering. To love well, you must know how to be alone. This isn't just poetic, it's philosophical. Nietzsche revered solitude, not as loneliness, but as necessary space for reflection, for becoming. He warned against relationships built from desperation. When two incomplete people come together to avoid their own emptiness, they don't create wholeness, they create dependency. That's not love, that's escape. Real love requires the strength to be alone, to sit with your hunger, your wounds, your desires, and not demand someone else fix them. In solitude, we meet the parts of ourselves we've outsourced, our capacity to soothe, to listen, to accept, and from that groundedness, we can approach another not with need, but with presence. Nietzsche might say, if your love requires the other to fill your void, it is not love. It is hunger dressed in romance, and hunger will always devour what it touches. Freedom and love often feel like opposites. Love asks for closeness, freedom asks for space. Love invites surrender, freedom demands autonomy. But what if they're not in conflict? Nietzsche saw freedom not as doing whatever we want, but as becoming the author of our lives, taking responsibility for our choices. And love, when stripped of illusion, is one of those choices. We often speak of falling in love, as if it happens to us, but this language is passive, disempowering. It places love in the realm of fate, instead of freedom. But Nietzsche reminds us, you are responsible for your values. If love is one of them, then you must choose it, actively, consciously, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, to love someone while giving them their freedom, to love someone while honoring your own. This is the real challenge, and it's not a one-time decision, it's a practice, a discipline. Nietzsche would say, don't love like a slave to your emotions, love like a creator who carves meaning into chaos. Love is not the answer, but it might be the question, a question that asks, who are you really? What do you want, truly? What are you willing to risk, honestly? Nietzsche never promised comfort, he promised transformation, and love, when taken seriously, does just that. It burns away illusion, it humbles the ego, it demands authenticity, and in return, it offers not happiness, but truth. Maybe that's the real romance, not the perfect ending, but the courage to face ourselves with another, as honestly as we can, because in a world of illusion, to love truly, without masks, without fantasy, without need, that might be the most revolutionary act of all.